Wouldn't you know it? The GOP is attempting to obstruct justice. There is an investigation. I'm not sure if you've heard about this obscure piece of news. There's an investigation into a guy by the name of Donald J. Trump. It seems to be ramping up. As a matter of fact, we are sort of on indictment watch this whole week and possibly next week as well for the first ever indictment of a former president. Well, Don Trump invited his MAGA crowd out to protest a la January 6th on his behalf. And the GOP is doing their part to obstruct justice by trying to drag Alvin Bragg into court. Here's the story.
George Soros-backed prosecutor, he can't take the heat, so the guy's yielding to the political pressure.
Wait a minute. George Soros-backed prosecutor. That's something right there. We need to start doing that. Why is this guy called a George Soros-backed prosecutor? I know about the racist dog whistles, right? They're saying he's a Jewish guy, funded this guy's campaign. But it's not so crazy on its face. Yeah. All right. I get it. Anti-Jewish stuff, that's bad. But what's the technique they're using? They're pointing out where this person's motivations supposedly lie. They're doing it dishonestly. But we should be doing that honestly. Billionaire-backed is what we should be saying. Because you can say it for every single Republican politician. Unless it's like state level, but like national level, every single representative. Yes. Put that in your vocabulary. Billionaire-backed. It's going to get a lot of Democrats too, by the way. Good. Make them embarrassed for taking that money. Billionaire-backed. Let's start saying that.
Pressure generated by the former prosecutor.
This is a very politically motivated DA, and it's criminal penalties for a campaign violation. Most of these things shouldn't be criminal at all for ordinary citizens, much less for an ex-president.
The only thing he wants to do is weaponize the law against his political enemies. President Trump is a victim of that.
Republicans have been shouting to just about anyone who will listen that any investigation into Donald Trump is de facto illegitimate. The chairs of the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees even sent a letter asking Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg to testify before them, quote, about what plainly appears to be a politically motivated prosecutorial decision. And now Democrats are pushing back, responding. Maryland Democrat Jamie Raskin, ranking Oversight Committee member, saying, quote, the Republicans' letter to the Manhattan District Attorney represents an astonishing and unprecedented abuse of power that is, quote, attempt to use congressional resources to interfere in an ongoing criminal investigation. Congressman Ruben Gallego is a Democrat of Arizona and a candidate for Senate there, and he joins me now. I was struck by the unprecedented line in Jamie Raskin's quote, and it's a word we use often and have justification to use often these days. What do you think about this letter that was sent to the DA's office from your Republican colleagues?
Let me just jump in ever so quickly and say that Ruben Gallego is the politician that I am constantly hot and cold with. I love the guy overall. I never am sure if I agree with him the first time I hear it. I don't know what it is. But there is a full disclosure. There's a 50% chance that I'm going to, at one point in the segment, say, Ruben Gallego's wrong. And then 5 minutes later say, well, maybe he's right, though. Watch and see me flip-flop on this guy. But I do, overall, love what he's all about. And I believe he's genuinely progressive where I want him to be.
Well, it's just a letter that just kind of shows the full hypocrisy of the Republican Party right now. First of all, they talk about local control, and now they're trying to take local control away from a local DA and a grand jury. They talk about the rule of law, and yet they're trying to basically overturn the rule of law because they want to really suck up to a former president who has zero control over the party, but has certainly control over a lot of their futures. And it really shows that in the long run, the basics of the Republican Party is for power and not for really for the continuity of the rule of law or the preservation of democracy. It's something that really goes back to January 6th. They make exceptions for everything as long as it's in the favor of the Republican Party.
Yeah, I was struck by this. I had missed this, but in the Times reporting on this, Annie Carney and Luke Broadwater, that last month that Trump's own lawyer, Takapina, wrote to Mr. Jordan calling on Congress to investigate the egregious abuse of power by what he called a rogue local district attorney, according to a copy of the letter obtained by the New York Times. So there's, this is a kind of tandem operation, and I wonder if you think that tandemness has any chance of breaking at any point, or it's just the House Republican caucus is an arm of Trump fundamentally.
One thing I want to say about Alvin Bragg, yeah, he did campaign on basically saying, he didn't literally say, but basically saying he would investigate Trump. I do want to make it clear, he did not, during his campaign, say that he had already decided that Donald Trump was guilty of something and he was going to go get him. That's misconstruing what he had campaigned on. But let's not be goofy with this. It was pretty obvious that he meant he was going to investigate Donald Trump. But if we're going to be frank about that, let's also be frank about the fact that it was pretty obvious Trump needed to be investigated. He had broken the law on camera multiple times. It's insane that it has taken this long, that it's this late in the week, and we still don't have an indictment in. Fucking dight already. You can't knock this guy for doing what people put him in office to do. It would be different if Trump was some guy, some random businessman. It would be different if Trump was a normal politician who sounded more or less normal on camera and didn't make public calls to intimidate witnesses and overturn the election and do all of the things we've seen him do. But Trump did. And pretending like we need to put on kid gloves with him is insane. And it's a mockery of justice.
The House Republican caucus, the House Senate caucus, and in general, the whole GOP is an arm of Trump. They cannot exist without Trump and the base that he brings to the Republicans. So they will do everything to keep him alive, keep him out of jail, and keep him viable, because at the end of the day, they don't believe in him. They believe in the power that he brings to them. And so if they have to, break the spirit of the rule of law that we've had in this country for, centuries, if they have to potentially break our democracy like did on January 6th, if they have to break all the norms and rules that we have had in this country that has made us such a great country, they will do it as long as it means that they get to hold power. That's what we're seeing right now. It's just a raw power move. And if it screws a grand jury in the process, they do not mind doing that.
Well, geez. It's talking a big game about disagreeing with Gallego on something, but nope. Thus far, 100% on board. He's now twice in this segment. He is said exactly what I think needs to be said about the Republican Party. They don't have ethics. They don't have standards. They don't have morals. None of those things. They have no principles, in other words. Purely, they are self-interested. If tomorrow, every Republican voter, like every Republican voter, every conservative came out and said, we support trans rights, we support gay marriage, we all just got a message from God that says this is what we support now. You can bet that every single one of these Republicans would say, politicians would say, we got the same message. Yeah, we agree. They don't truly believe in anything. And that is both their main advantage, and it is like in politics, because they're not tethered to a belief, so there's not anything that they're worried about sacrificing. But that's also our advantage in manipulating them. And don't get it twisted. We should be working on manipulating Republican politicians just like we're working on pushing Democratic politicians. The idea at the end of the day is to get the policies in place that we want. Unfortunately, there's a ton wrong with America right now, but the upside to that is most Americans agree on what we need to fix it. Most Americans support some form of free health care. So remember, when you're contesting with Republicans, when you're trying to get a Republican politician to do something, you're never working against any moral or ethic they have. You're never having to debate with their principles. If you view it for what it is, which is purely a power game for them, that is how you will effectively make a case to that politician.
Let me ask you this question, because obviously we're in totally uncharted territory here, right? We just haven't dealt with this before, even though, as I'll get to in a little bit in the program, other countries have all the time, right? But there, in the abstract, right, there is a question if, we have an incredibly decentralized system in this country as far as criminal justice goes. There's, I think, thousands of jurisdictions, thousands of local prosecutors. You can imagine a rogue prosecutor, politically motivated, issuing an arrest warrant for Hillary Clinton, for instance, right? And so there is at the nub of this, right? There's this question of how this power is being deployed, and how do you think about it in a sort of slippery slope sense? Like, do you worry about this uncorking something like that?
Look, I think we have to worry about it, but at the same time, we have to be wary of us avoiding our duty to uphold the rule of law. He's not president of the United States right now. He did this as actions before he was president of the United States. Whatever they have discovered, and by the way, we don't know what they're actually charging him with, right? We can't assume that it's something as a misdemeanor. We have to wait to see what the grand jury actually says, which is why it's even more weird, and I think at some point, some level devious, that they are actually trying to stop this grand jury before they even announced their findings. So that's something that it's totally being lost in terms of the focus right now. Look, do we want to talk about how this is an uncorking? There was an uncorking before. The years that they spent going after Bill Clinton with Whitewater, the years that they spent going after Hillary Clinton. We've seen this happen before. It does not mean, again, that we should be going out there looking for retribution, but a lot of this has already happened in the past. Now, at the same time, we can't take away the right of local jurisdictions for them to enforce what they believe is the rule of law. And there are checks and balances to it. A lot of them are found at the local level, and I have trust and belief in the American people that they will do that. But we can't stop ourselves from actually enforcing that rule of law because we're afraid of what the Republicans are going to do or what Trump is going to do. And essentially, you're allowing politics to come into your judicial decisions, which I think in the end is even more detrimental than what happens when we actually potentially indict a former president.
Well, yeah, Gallego's got it right there. You cannot take political temperature into account when it comes to matters of justice. Either the thing happened or it didn't. Either it was illegal or it wasn't. That's it. Politics only comes into play when we are deciding whether or not something should be legal. That's it. It's disturbing to me that on January 6th, Republicans and extremists asked the question of the Justice Department and of America, do we actually have to respect everybody's vote? And what disturbs me is that the government's answer was this echo of a man, Merrick Garland, whispering, I'll have to think about it for 2 years. Now we have elected officials attempting to interfere with an investigation. Links in the description, folks. Tell the Department of Justice you want this charged as well. This attempt to interfere with another investigation. Will they listen? Maybe, maybe not, but they'll hear. They'll see that America no longer has patience with this nonsense, and we can't put up with it. We can't go on ignoring it and sitting quietly and hemming and hawing to ourselves while not doing or saying anything. At the very least, we need to write the Department of Justice and tell them there's more obstruction of justice. I don't care if they did it publicly and attempted to use their official position to do it. That's still obstruction of justice. I imagine, Merrick Garland, you will now be on this as well. And if you don't have the backbone for it, step aside for someone who does.